Rebecca will be here in a couple of minutes.
Morning.
Okay, Councillor Fox, but she will be joining, and I'll mention that when she does. Everyone, are we recording? Yep. Marvellous. Welcome. This meeting will be recorded, and subject to the recording being of suitable quality, will be made available on the council's YouTube channel via the council, a link on the council's website. Councillors and staff, members of the public, if you have your cell phones on, please switch them on to silent mode off. Health and safety, the emergency exits for the supper room up in front and the rear of the building. If we need to evacuate the building, please use one of these exits and assemble by the playground and remain at the assembly area until the building has been completely cleared. Now the information, Councillor Hay, will you read the information?
Certainly. We pledge that we will faithfully and impartially use our skill, wisdom and judgment throughout discussions and deliberations ahead of us today in order to make responsible and appropriate decisions for the benefit of South Wairarapa District at large. We commit individually and as council to the principles of integrity and respect and to upholding the vision and values we have adopted in our long-term land strategic document in order to energise, unify and enrich our district.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. Item A1, apologies. Do we have any apologies? I have one for lateness from Rebecca Fox, who will be joining us soon. Any other apologies?
We've got an apology from Pip Maynard, who's down with her father in hospital.
Councillor Evans, will you move to accept the apologies? Do we have a seconder? Thank you very much. Councillor Miller, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Sorry, all those against, the motion is carried. Item A2, are there any conflicts of interest? Are there any acknowledgements or tributes? No? Fine. Okay, public participation. We have Lee Carter and Mike Gray speaking today. There's a 5-minute time limit for speaking and questions. Suzanne will bang the gavel or make a noise at 4 minutes, and the timer will go off at 5. I do encourage you to leave time for questions because we will stick to the 5 minute. Welcome, Lee Carter.
I've also got Karen Kershaw who's joining me today. Morning, everyone. Morning. So we're just here to briefly talk to you about Rapper Valley 210A Moihi Road. For those of you who don't know, I moved from the Bidston ward to the Martinborough ward and recently purchased a property in the Rapper Valley development. A few things have occurred as we've progressed through the sale of purchase and since purchased. And so the two key things we'd like to talk to you, or myself and Karen will intervene when she needs to. Karen Kershaw is here to support me, but also apologies, Karen. Karen is the family that allowed or sold for the development to happen in Moihi Road. So she's here to support me mainly around the address. So there's two key things I would like to talk to you about this morning, and that is the address of Moihi of Rapper Valley Development and also the naming of Rapper Valley Development. So really getting into the crux of it, 210A Moihi Road is not Rapper Valley Development address. It's actually Karen's family's home address. So I know that there are things being put into place to try and rectify that. but I think we want to stress the inconvenience of that at the moment. And for example, we get a shed built, and to get that built, the first question is where are we going to reside the shed? And I have to say, well, actually it's at Moihe Road, and it's D210A Moihe Road, but it isn't actually 210A, and that's being addressed at the moment. And Karen, you might want to touch on this too. There's been quite a bit of inconvenience with a property already undergoing development there with their stable and horses and arena and other things. And so their deliveries are going to Karen's home because that's the only address we have at the moment. So all 11 properties are deemed to be 210A Moihe Road, which is incorrect. So we just wanted to bring that to the foresight of when developments are being considered by the council, that we ensure, or if you can ensure in the operations team, that the right address is appointed. Just touch on your address and the next address they've changed.
Yeah, well, it's actually my daughter and son, my son and daughter-in-law's address, and they've had stuff delivered to them with a very irate truck driver when told, no, this isn't the address. My daughter-in-law's and son is very concerned about, ambulance, fire, whatever like that. And she's also concerned now that she asked me to bring this up, that their 210A has been taken off the rate demand, and another number put on, 157, which is an old place that used to be down Moihe Road, that's now gone. But their reckon number's been changed for some reason on the rate demands.
So thank you, Suzanne. So just briefly, we just want to kind of identify the issues that it's causing at the moment, not having the correct address, or not having maybe council when going through the development process assign an address to it. So I'll just leave that there, that's just for you to acknowledge and receiving that information. We would like I understand the rectification will be of a road naming and record numbers, but in the meantime it's still 210A, and I don't know how that gets addressed. I just want to keep going, sorry Rita. The second key, because of timing, I want to get on to is the naming of Rapper Valley. It has become apparent through some Māori input and voice that Rapper Valley is a most disrespectful name for and not only that, for the Wairarapa. Rapper is deemed as a slang name, and I would equalise it to when we talk about Māori, we call them rangi. So that's how I'm kind of feeling that at the moment. I actually thought the real estate people were joking when they called it Rapper Valley, because Rapper to me is quite a slang word. So I want to look at how we may actually address that, and if there's a possibility for a development name change, which could be quite difficult, but I am getting requests from ancestral type people of that land area that it be changed.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Ruby.
Now, welcome Mike Gray.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mike.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to express my and other citizens' concerns. Topic, of course, is council and community relationships, which is a very broad area, deep concern to a lot of people. Secondly, I'd like to acknowledge that the challenges that SWDC is facing. As I'm sure many of you are aware, some of these are an overhang or consequences of decisions or non-decisions by previous councillors. That's the good aspect, I guess, of what I'm hoping to convey today. One of my principal concerns is this room. This supper room as a pseudo council chamber committee meeting room. I believe it's an inadequate facility for the conduct of council business. There have been times when I've been in this room where it hasn't been easy to hear what you people are talking about if you're sitting back there. Everybody in this room should be able to hear very clearly what it is that's going on. So there's a need for an appropriate sound system for use here and in whatever other facility is used by the council, whether it's in Featherston, Greytown or elsewhere. There is in Greytown a system set up in the WBS room, which to my knowledge has never been used for any board meetings. The other suggestion concerns this room, and it's about, and indeed other situations as well. It's a better layout for elected members and officials of the council. The reality is that the layout is not adequate to enable these people back here to be able to see and clearly hear what's going on. So the challenge is to design the facility in a way that people can interact in that particular way. Last week in this room, unfortunately, and I'm not picking on the mayor when I say so, but the mayor turned his back on the audience and the media representative during the committee meeting in this room. That's not the only time that that's occurred. Again, I think it's unfortunate for the mayor. It's where the mayor was placed at this end of the table here, in such a way that if he wished to speak to somebody specifically, such as the chief executive, he turned and faced that person and had his back to the audience. I don't think that's very respectful for the audience. So that's a challenge for you to get on and deal with. The other particular matter I want to refer to is this community development report, which you received on the 2nd of September. I find it interesting that there's a thing in here about what community development is not. It's a heading, but there's no page indicating what those items were. So it's missing. Is it available? And we find out what the author of the document intended to convey is not community development. The other concern is that the report was received by the council, which was effectively the request at the front of the document. There was no indication by you as decision makers of any expected specific time-related actions from that report. There's a lot of very good material in here that could and should be action specific. No indication to the public at large that anything useful will come out of this report. The other part of that is that there's a section in here. It's entitled, What the Community is Saying About SWTC. I trust you read all of them. I'd love to know where they originated from. Were they contributions by people to the author of the report? Or have they been reported in some other forum? All of those have some implications for the nature of the relationship between the community and the council. When I say community, I mean the district. Consistent with that concern, of course, is what is going to be done about those comments. Again, there's no indication of what might or might not happen in that context.
Thank you, Mr. Gray.
I haven't finished.
We have a 5-minute notice, and thank you very much for your time.
So you're not willing to let me use the last minute to talk about it?
We're quite clear that it's a 5-minute time. So thank you for your time.
My only comment to that is that democratic. No.
It was the full 5 minutes.
I understood.
So now moving on to item A5, questions from public participation. So if we could, is there any comment regarding the submission from Lee Carter and Karen Herschel as regarding the numbers pits? Harry, would you like to comment?
As I heard sort of three actions that council should consider. One was how do we make sure that when a new development goes in, that the naming conventions are replaced and identified. So we're ahead of the game, not try and fix it later. I think that's a very good point, and we need to look into that. It's something we should have a conversation with the developer about at the time. The specifics, yes, we are working that through. We do need to actually change the name of the road because the rapid numbers only have a certain A to E, and that's been taken up with the Greytown Community Board as a delegation for the name change. Yes, we did check, it is in Greytown, oddly enough. And the third point I heard was the talking about the development itself, the naming convention rapid. And I think there was a conversation with the actual developer. I'll have to investigate it. I'm not sure how that change gets made.
So with the name change, I'm assuming it's going to go through the Marion Centre Committee.
It would go via the Greytown Community Board to the multi-standing committee for comment on any suggestions.
Because it's sitting right next door to the park.
I don't, what is the distance between the entrance to the Rapper subdivision and the main junction of Bickham's Cove? I mean, that should determine the rapid number, sure, because it's the distance from the highest intersection to the entrance for emergency services. I think that was the intention of rapid numbers. So it should be clarified based on distance anyway. But I think this is quite an operational matter.
Alex, Lee is presenting to the community board again tonight.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm presenting on the road name.
Yeah.
Right. So can we just, could you send out to the community board members the paper so that we can read into this before tonight so we understand? Because I was completely in the dark about this, and it would be good for Lee who's coming tonight so that at least the community board members are up to play with what she's coming to talk to us about.
But I think this is from an operational perspective.
Don't disagree with that.
But I would certainly advise, or not advise, but encourage the CEO to discuss with officers procedures to ensure that rapid numbers are correctly assigned to new subdivisions prior to the sections going to sale to avoid this in the future. And we do acknowledge Karen's inconvenience as a result of this.
So, sorry, so you get something sent out to us today before tonight. Yeah, great, thank you.
Can I just ask a question when you think this might be resolved? What would be the time frame to get this? In terms of the number of.
So as soon as there's agreement on the change of the name of the road.
Okay.
That's what's predicated by.
May I just ask one question? How long has this been going on for?
This was made aware to me by an email from Karen, I think 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
So, and I think there's a lot of action already gone on with council officers to resolve the rapid number. But also the name has come out of this as well. So we want to react to that as well.
Are there any suggestions for the name changes that are going to be presented to the community board as it got to that stage?
No, I don't think so.
And perhaps we can ensure that the names, we always have to be given 3 different names presented to the community board, not variations on
So
the name.
the guidelines were sent out about what the policy is for naming and all that type. So the information was provided.
Could I just ask Lee whether there's been any discussion about the name change for the road? Have you guys had any?
The only email I received is from Harry, and that's just to, I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, Harry, that in order for us to progress with the rapid numbers, we actually just need to get on and name the road.
Right.
And I get that, but there's a bigger picture to that as well, and my presentation tonight is to talk about, yes, I understand we need to name the road, which is either going to be Oliver, Archer or Hunter, I've heard. However, at a later date, we need to rename the road that will be specific to the history of the land. So we're coming back to the history of the land because it's actually quite a prominent piece of Māori land here. And I understand that all of this has been going on for 6 weeks because Karen rang the council 6 weeks ago to talk about the address and rec numbers and all that kind of stuff.
Because it makes it even more confusing now because of the community board tonight, there's a proposal to rename a road, and I'm assuming it's this road. And did you just say that that's only going to be a temporary name before it?
Well, I understood that council were looking to name it.
Yeah.
I actually don't fully know, but from the email exchange that I've had, it looks like council are looking to remedy this by naming the road. Initially, I contacted council maybe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, identifying record number problems and asking for the road to have some consideration to be named to the history of the land. Now, that's probably going to take too long because we need to talk to neighbours and Māori and Māori standing committee, and the council just need to get on with the process in order to get the record numbers.
Okay, yeah, I think we shouldn't really engage.
Apologies.
Yeah, no, it's all cool, but if we could move on, but.
No, it's linked into exactly what I'm talking about tonight.
And it is something for the community to consider, not necessarily for us council to discuss.
No, I understand.
Okay. Now, do we have any other issues from, actions from public participation from Karen? Okay, is there any discussion required from some of the submissions from Mike Gray?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Your Worship. With regards to the RIM, it is a meeting held in public. So I just wanted to kind of just say that it is a meeting held in public, not addressed to public.
Yes, yeah, I feel we should be looking at better sound. I think we know that participation through Zoom is difficult. And I think we've been looking at miniature microphones for each desk, but we are mindful of cost and cost to ratepayers. Also from a using of this room, I think it's a fantastic room if we can solve that, but certainly we are moving from place to place to find the best spot given the resources available to the council and around the council building. Yes?
I'd just like to acknowledge Mike for his constructive and helpful suggestions and counsel. Mike, as you know, is an ex-councillor and is well respected in the community. I think we should not lightly dismiss any criticisms that may fall at our feet. We do need to improve or continue to improve our engagement with the community, and we need to be alert to the concerns that Mike's raised. So thank you, Mike.
Any other actions? Great, moving on.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we acknowledge Judy's.
Oh yeah, we're going to actually, I think Councillor Jepson.
Anyway, I must apologise for that, but the council were doing roadworks.
And also, largely by Councillor Fox as well via Zoom. I trust you're feeling well.
Are you seated securely?
You're on the edge, you see.
So item A6, Community Board and Māori Standing Committee reports from the meetings. As we don't have any chairs from the Community Board or the Māori Standing Committee present, so we will carry on through that. Extraordinary business. Do we have any changes? Currently, we have no extraordinary business. That hasn't changed since the agenda. Right, now we're going on to item B1, which is the schedule of ordinary meetings. Do we have a mover to receive the report? Thank you very much, Ross. Seconded, thank you very much, councillor Hay. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, the motion is carried. So, Mr. Wilson or Ms. Yates, would you like to give us a brief outline of what you're asking from us today?
I'll start this up and any questions or clarification. So, I mean, the key thing here is council must consider its meeting schedule for its ordinary council committees for the calendar year. We have a very high meeting schedule, and that places a burden in terms of attendance for you as councillors, but equally my concern is in being able to get full and proper and well-researched reports to you in a timely way that can flow through the agenda. So we had a look at what other councils of a similar size and a similar population are doing, and it was actually quite revealing. So if you turn to the table on page 3, we looked at Cardston, Otahuanga, Ruapehu and Gore. And bear in mind, this is only for a 3-month slice of the year. And if you extrapolated that out, we actually have proportionally a very high frequency of meetings compared to other councils. So there's something in terms of getting the balance right, so we can actually get the lead time to get quality reports to you. Equally, that you have the time to digest them. You'll recall when I first started, we had a very pattern of late reports, all those types of things. So we've got that under control, but the actual lead time to get to you between councils is still coming like a funnel. It's just trying to rank things through a very narrow hole to get them to you, get them peer reviewed and checked. So my concern is about the quality of information you're getting to make decisions and the timeliness of it. Obviously, the condensing those times also has an impact on staff workloads and your own reading time and time to consider matters. And we've been pretty good at making sure that we're not sending late papers through, but it's because we're squeezing it up at the front end. And that's always a risk because the critical thing is you have the information to make decisions. And so in thinking of the council schedule for next year, we're suggesting that we move from a 6-week cycle to an 8-week cycle. It's a 2 weeks difference. So again, for completeness, to give you the information, we've also looked at the number of decisions relative to the amount of meetings that we're having, because there's a balance between information and there's a balance with decisions. So again, we've done that analysis. So the suggestion before you, and of course it's your decision, is that we move from a 6-weekly cycle to an 8-weekly cycle, and that we're able to schedule it. For completeness, community boards, this decision the council make is only for council and its subcommittees. Community boards must make its own decision on its frequency of meetings, but we'd be suggesting to the community boards a schedule of the same frequency, so moving to an 8-weekly cycle. So that's a summary of the paper. I'll take it as read. If anyone's got any questions on that.
I'm the first one. I know we've been, this is actually for Suzanne. We have been trying to get the public notification timeline and agendas out in a timely manner to ensure that the public have all the information at a reasonable time prior to the meeting. Is this made more difficult because as soon as the minutes are out, you're virtually preparing the next agenda, or would this extra 2 week make your job easier and make it more transparent? Yeah.
I don't know that the agendas would be online immediately,
Right.
but it would certainly ease up the committee advisors' time.
Okay.
We don't start. Since we began as this term as the elected officials, we've already removed a number of subcommittee groups. So surely that's had some impact on the amount of work that gets done. How many have we removed?
At the beginning of this, including groups and subcommittees, 8 removed. However, I think, while that's that might have even made this picture even look even worse, I think. But I think if we look at our comparative examples we have in there, I think that's probably whether or not we are providing the correct level of governance anyway. I'm just throwing it out there. I think if we ignore that and look at where we are now and move through.
I think one of the major concerns that I have is the delay in decision making. We're presented with, for instance, this item here, and if we can't actually come to a final decision, are we going to delay it for another 8 weeks? As an example. So whereas
On that, with the ability to do extraordinary meetings, how many extraordinary meetings have we done already since we became an Australian? So we do have the ability to schedule another meeting within
But
that
then
8
that
period.
puts an affront on the fact that, even if we did have it 8 weeks, we'd still need those interim meetings. So it's for urgent matters, but so is there any benefit? Because we all still have to come together.
I mean, I would say that if something like that, a 6-week delay is very similar to an 8-week delay.
A 6-week delay, in my opinion, is a lot less painful and frustrating than an 8-week delay.
Yes, I had a concern from Councillor Maynard this morning that, but she was quite happy to, and it's unfortunate she's not here to hear the discussion, but her concern was mainly around the committees like Assets and Services and FAR, that if you're not a member of it, you don't get a lot of the information until just prior to your full council meeting. I'm assuming that if we can get the timing right with those sub-meetings, subgroups, I should say, and get the minutes out and the discussions and the recommendations well in advance of our full council meeting, Pip said she would be happy with that. She's, as I said before, it's unfortunate she wasn't here to hear the discussion. But I'm actually on the same wavelength with her. We nail a lot of things at our subcommittees and we put a recommendation to full council. Bearing in mind, not every councillor sitting around the table, they don't hear the discussion. So they need that information early so they can source the information they need. I mean, whether that puts too much pressure back onto the staff again, I don't know.
But that's exactly part of the phasing, is to get that lead time between the committees. Because often we're in an unfortunate situation where the agendas are virtually written at the same time with and the first time you see any minutes from the subcommittees is actually at the council meeting.
Yes.
And so actually having a chance to read, consider, ask questions of committee members prior to the council seeing the agendas and the reports is actually a very important thing to do. So you've got that ability to interrogate the information as opposed to simply just read it on the day. In other words, you're squeezing everything together, you're not getting a good path of information to flow through.
I mean, it's all right being a committee member because you're getting the information at the meeting, but she was concerned that the other council members don't get that level.
And this would significantly improve that.
That means that you could stagger, so stagger or move back the subcommittee meeting to allow the minutes to come out and then be distributed with a 2-week time frame before the next council meeting. So that's just a lot more absorption.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the important thing is actually seeing those committee minutes and having a discussion with the chair or members of the committee to inform themselves. So you're not asking questions of clarification at the council table itself. You should always do that, of course, but if you've got a chance to interrogate it before, then you've got the full picture about what the nature of the discussion was.
Councillor Blimmer, you had
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at the table here, Harry, about the comparisons, and I sort of wonder to myself, what are we doing in excess of all the other councils? Because just seeing the number of meetings doesn't tell the full picture. And are we sort of having meetings for the sake of meetings? We've got too many. To me, it's not the council meetings. They're sort of on average with everyone else. It's the extraordinary amount of committee meetings we have. And what are we doing that is so different to the other councils that means that we've got the second smallest population, and yet we've got in some cases 3 times as many subcommittee meetings in the same period as other councils. So I would like to see a little bit more analysis done on this and say, what are we doing that's really good? What are we doing that's really bad? And perhaps the whole governance thing that we're doing, maybe we're over-governancing, but at this stage, just the numbers themselves paint a pretty dismal picture that we're perhaps having meetings for the sake of meetings.
We've included community boards there too.
Yeah. Yeah, so look,
I just draw your attention to the appendix. I think one of the answers to your question, Councillor, is the number of committees that we have and the frequency of those meetings. The combination of both of those contributes to that figure. If you look at the breakdown in the appendix, a lot of the committees in the other councils meet quarterly or perhaps once or twice a year.
like I come back to that point then, do we need to perhaps look at how often we're having our subcommittee meetings and say, do we need all these subcommittee meetings, as many as we're having? And look, I'm new on this, so
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'd like to sort of, if other councils, if all the other councils manage to go through with a quarterly audit of the committee, why are we having a monthly audit? What are we doing so different to the rest of the country?
Yes, I just had a comment for Karen. Did you have a look at a full year that, I know you wanted to exclude COVID because that might have things, but did you have a look at perhaps March 19 to March 20, a full year?
No, we just looked at that period because principally for the reason of COVID, and of course we were in a new triennium as well, just prior to COVID, so this is really the only period that we could look at. But we could go back and compare previous trienniums if that's going to help.
I think that, there's 2 things in there. What Alistair said is absolutely right. You need to be thinking about the level of governance decisions you need to make and the frequency of meetings and how the subcommittee would do. And the mayor signalled that we will be doing a review of that committee kind of membership and things. That's now.
Sorry, I didn't quite finish.
Sorry, so we will do that, but this is the important thing here is we do actually need to schedule what the meetings actually are. So my suggestion is that because you're still new, I wouldn't make too many radical decisions, take a step at a time. And then after a good year, you can actually sit down and say, well, actually, in terms of the number of subcommittee meetings and how that flows, you can do this. But the critical thing is it gives you a flow between your subcommittees and council. So Lisa.
Sorry, I just wanted to say one thing. So I completely understand where you're coming from, Harry, and certainly I think the reporting we're getting is extremely professional and obviously a lot. I was focusing on FAR and had a conversation with Katrina about that. So looking at the proposed schedule, I'm reasonably happy with that. I wouldn't want to see it any less than that. And we did request getting interim financials. So I'm happy with that. I've enjoyed your briefings to us where there's possibilities that we continue to be kept up to date with day-to-day things would be useful.
Through you, Your Honour. I think our biggest challenge in having a look at the other district councils, with the exception of Gore, we've got 3 hefty towns that we have to look after. So is moving to an 8-week schedule fair?
So if you take Ruapehu, for instance, that has Okuni, Tauranui, so yes, but you have community boards that look at the placemaking. Your role at the council and committee level is actually at the whole. So the community boards focus on the placemaking nature of those towns, whereas you as a council are making decisions about policy, strategy, on the whole. So it doesn't necessarily matter the towns per se in terms of workload.
And I think, sorry, Ross, and then Pam, sorry.
No, I'm reading through this and I don't know if I'm in a position to make a decision yet today, but I see it as an issue of quality over quantity, and I quite take on board Karen's and Harry's comments that it's a treadmill that as soon as one cycle ends, the other has to start. We are finding that we are being bombarded by reports that take a lot of time to prepare and little time beforehand to assimilate them properly and consider them. With a longer lead time or a longer meeting cycle, these can be processed a lot more efficiently, can be considered with more deliberation and in context. And I am sympathetic in principle to the idea. As others have said, perhaps we do need to review our governance structure to a small extent as to the nature of subcommittees and committees. But I do want to see us continue with the transparent committee structure where decisions are considered openly and clearly, but with a bit more time to focus on the real issues and not be snowed under with process.
I think on that, I think over the last year, we have seen an improvement in officers' reports, the quality of the information and the timeliness of the information, but I would like to think that this would allow them to get even better with more time between meetings to actually give us a considered argument rather than a rushed argument, if that is indeed occurring. So that's a positive. I'm not saying it's the way to go, but you've also got to bear in mind as well that outside those committees, if you're looking at shared committees and regional committees, there's another 20 or so committee meetings that we some of us attend as well. So
Pam had one.
Pam.
Thank you. I've got an opposite view in that I think we should retain our 6 weekly meetings. I think for members of the public, if they miss one meeting, to be able to present some concern they have, then to wait another 8 weeks before they can then represent that, it is an awful long time for them. That's basically 16 weeks before they can get their point put across. Secondly, I think that if we stick to the 6 weekly meetings, then we're going to have less extraordinary meetings because we won't need to schedule them. We'll be able to schedule those meetings within the timeframes that we've actually allocated. With regard to the committees that we've got, if they were scheduled so that they were 2 weeks before the council meetings, even on a 6 weekly basis, then we're going to get that information coming across rather than moving everything to an 8 weekly cycle. I just feel that that is too long a time frame. I know it puts pressure on officers and things like that, but that time frame has worked well since I've been on council, and I don't see a reason to change that at the moment. Nothing that in that report tells me that I need to change my opinion.
Just quickly, what does the community think? What does our community, the people that elect us, what do they think?
What did the community boards think?
No, the communities, our communities, what do they think?
I've had 2 people talk to me about this, and both are very concerned that of the extra time frame between meetings.
Thank you, Pam.
Sorry, do we think, Jimmy?
The point Pam made is very valid, that if Joe Public misses a meeting to get their point across, they've got to wait the 8 weeks. But if you position your subcommittee meetings in between, they are quite welcome to go to those meetings and talk on their concerns, whether it relates to FAR or assets and services or planning and regulatory. And so you're actually, and the key is getting the cycle right, I think, you know. But I see Pam, I understand Pam's concerns that they can't, you know,
And also, Pat, on that concern with regards to public access to elected officials, I mean, I get 20 emails a week on issues that could come before council, but, and I'm sure Harry does as well, that it's not like there's not other vehicles for issues to be brought into in front of councillors and elected officials and officers anyway. But I do acknowledge that the council meeting is a very formal one.
Just like to comment on that, I think there is real value in enhancing public participation at the subcommittees.
Yeah.
With the human nature to go straight to the top.
Mhm.
Okay, so personally, I think it is good practice to have people talking to the committees and allow the committee to chew over the issue when it is at that's where the issue is. Right, and let the committee chew it over. So whenever it pops up as a recommendation to council, then the committees have the chance to chew it over in the first instance. And so I don't think it's a matter of it's only council and that will delay it. It's actually, we've got a very good opportunity to encourage public participation through our subcommittee structure, which is a cabinet.
Sorry, just lead time on extraordinary meetings. What is the official lead time for the council? 2 days?
I think so.
Yeah, there's 2 days to allow.
That seems a bit of a rush as well. If they're thinking about following Pam's point.
Yeah.
If they did want to do something, they've got to be pretty well up to speed.
But by nature, an extraordinary meeting is extraordinary. So we do our minimums. But I think if you look at the reasons we had extraordinary meetings, they were issues that could not wait, even if we had a 6-weekly cycle, which we did have through. So at the likes of the adoption of the annual report, the
Land in Greytown.
The land in Greytown, where we had to urgently rubber stamp the previous council's decision. Those sorts of things. I don't think that they're going to be, this is going to be fixed.
It's not going to reduce those.
Or reduced. So, Brenda, then Pam.
No, I've read out my questions.
Cool, Pam.
Alex, you mentioned that people have the opportunity to come to the committee meetings and things like that. The only difference is that not all councillors are at those committees, and to get all councillors to hear their point of view, 99% of the time all councillors are at the at this meeting. This is the only public forum they have to let all councillors hear of something at the same time and to have that debated at the same meeting.
I would agree in as much as the debate by all councillors in one meeting, but certainly it's publicly accessible to all councillors as soon as those minutes are brought out.
Yeah, but the minutes don't always, let me carefully phrase that. Sometimes there is discussion within a committee that isn't, it's not a verbatim of the meeting that is put into the minutes. And so therefore, unless you hear that actual debate at the committee meeting, you don't pick up all the nuances and things like that that are being said.
Yeah, so those committee meetings are recorded as well, so there's another opportunity for councillors to go back to look at those verbatums. But I take your point, not necessarily a complete picture immediately. Yeah.
Look, I like what you said, Harry, about encouraging people to go to committees. I think that's a really good thing. And if we balance it sort of every month, we have either a committee meeting or a council meeting, then you're going to get that flow. You're going to get the information coming through quite nicely. But I would say also that I think our full council meetings are rushed. I think 5 minutes for a presentation for somebody who's prepared something coming to us doesn't leave us any time. I would certainly like to see public participation be expanded so that they have an opportunity, because some of the things that our people raise are quite complicated, and 5 minutes doesn't give them a chance to do that. We've heard Pip say that the meetings that we schedule for a very short period of time, or a couple of hours, is really difficult for her work. So we would be better off to say, let's just block out the day for the council meeting so that we have time to debate the things both with the public and amongst ourselves. Makes it much easier for those who have jobs than to schedule a whole day out of their day rather than taking sort of half day leaves. Rebecca, it'd be interesting to hear your point of view on that, whether that's easier to schedule. And I think it would give us greater exposure to the public and actually having some of these issues raised in a bit more time and less rushed.
Harry, Rebecca, have you got any comments on that?
Yeah, I'll just address Councillor Plimmer's comment. It's actually not easier for me to schedule a whole day. It's actually easier for me to schedule blocks of days for me to work around that in my current scenario. It's really interesting hearing this debate. I think there's a lot of good points that are being raised. My concern always relates to the quality of information. Are we getting information which is full and thorough? And are we getting the appropriate time? And everyone's timing here is a little bit different, to actually speak with others in council about it or make some inquiry around that. For myself, I think we're a bit short on that. So 8 weeks, an 8-week schedule could go some way towards alleviating that. And if we bring and encourage people to speak at subcommittee level and then take that into a full council and then debate that and also maintain the conversation around the table, outside of the table, as well as in a public forum, I think is really important. And that's something which I think possibly we're losing a little bit of at the moment. We're just not having the same level of conversation potentially that we have been having, and that's probably where some of the information is getting lost or not being shared, where it could be between subcommittees and coming back up to that council level.
Thank you, Councillor. The other question I noticed there on page 6 in Stella that you have approximate hours saved per cycle of start times. Have we actually costed that from an average hourly rate? I mean, it's an ancillary side, but I think cost is also part of it.
The main problem is it's an opportunity cost. So it's you're not actually saving money. It means that the time that people have can either do a thorough job or be doing something related to business as usual. So it's not a cost per se, it's an opportunity cost. Because what you're saving is time, essentially, because it's still getting paid for that time.
Yeah. But if they're able to do other things, then sure.
Exactly, it makes it more productive, basically.
Because I'm looking at this, we're saving 220 staff hours per year. And there must be, if we don't want to put a cost on that, or do we want to try?
I'm just saying,
yeah, it's too hard.
I'm just saying, because the person's being paid full time. You can't actually say that that's a saving, because it means the person could be, instead of doing half an hour, could be doing an hour and a half. Yeah, and doing more research and more data stuff. So it's an opportunity cost. It's not actually a material dollar saving.
And that's the advantage of having your meeting scheduled, so they have that time to get that data. Like assets and services, if you're making a recommendation, it gives the staff time to find all the detail that may be required at a full council meeting.
So what I'm going to, sorry, yeah.
I just had a Harry question. What feedback have you had from the ELT or from the staff in general, how that might improve their?
I think it's a great idea. I mean,
and that's
from the policy point of view. So I mean, as Rebecca and a number of the councillors said, sometimes as I said, in the classic examples, when we first started, you were getting late reports. You were not being so getting the schedule right, but the depth of the ability to report and balance business as usual. You know, so it's trying to get the flow of analysis to support good decision making. That's the critical thing to do. But equally, you've got to balance that against this. The ship is still doing its day-to-day work. So trying to get the good information to support decision making, good information to you, good communication, at the same time doing our day jobs, you know, running our assets, running our services. So it's getting that balance right. So And that's really what this is essentially is about, is getting the better analysis, but also making sure that that opportunity cost in terms of time can also be used to balance the imperative of the day-to-day stuff. I mean, as Alex mentioned, it's the public participation that actually comes to council relative to the interaction with our customers who come in through the door, come into you as councillors, come in as infinitesimal. So if we can improve the public participation debate, so much the better, but actually proportionally to the issues that are raised on a daily, weekly basis through even just the elected members, the mayor, to staff. It's in the hundreds as opposed to one or two.
If I could just say one more thing about the public participation. I think it's really important that we remember that public participation is not just about being heard from our perspective, but it's actually about the public who have come here, so they leave here thinking that they have been heard as well. And if I take Mike this morning, he clearly is going to leave here going, I didn't get my point across. Now, that's not really going to be a good thing for us as a council. So we need to make sure that when our public are coming and giving up their time to come and talk to us, that they leave here going, I was heard, I was listened to, and I got my point across. Because that's possibly more important than actually what you're saying, to a certain extent, is that concept. And if we have these 5-minute things, and we're doing that because we're time constrained as a council, we're perhaps creating.
I think we're doing that because we have standing orders.
Standing orders.
That have that. So I'm more than happy. I think we could all be happy to discuss and debate standing orders from that perspective.
But also through standing orders, there's the opportunity for the chair to extend a conversation or a presentation.
Yep.
So I think the conversation we've had in the past, Brenda, is that if you make an exception in one case, then other people who are presenting say, hey, we should apply across the board, and that's the challenge of.
So I mean, who's in charge of the standing orders? Because as far as I was concerned, we were in charge of the standing orders and how we.
So you adopt standing orders. So you consciously make a decision that this is the method by which you're going to treat everyone fairly and impartially. Right? Because there will definitely be times where a time limit, you may want to vary it, but that means that anyone, no matter how if they request to vary, if you're being equitable, you'll do it every time. Yeah, you can't pick and choose. So you do need to make a call about what your standing situation is, rather allow the exception to dominate. It's a tricky one.
I agree that we adopt the standing orders, but we also can make slight changes to those standing orders.
Oh, of course you can.
So there's no reason why we can't adopt this instead of a 5-minute, a 7-minute.
No, that's what I was saying. We need to look at it. If you want across the board, I'm sure we're happy to.
But the point is, you need to make it cost.
Okay, yeah. So what I'm going to do is, do we feel as a council? No, I just say, do we feel we have enough information to make a decision today, or is there further information you would like from council officers to assist you in making a decision on this resolution?
I can't comfortably make a decision because I'm elected into this position and I have not taken this back to the community, and I'd like to get their feedback and their points of view.
Any other comments on your ability to make a decision?
Well, with respect to my friend Brenda, I take a different view. Because I think as elected representatives, we ought to give a greater number of opportunities, but greater quality of decision-making and informed decision-making. I do wonder what more information could be presented to us. And I'm very grateful for that comprehensive report. And also the perspective insights that it gives too, looking at, for example, Carterton, although a single town, has considerably fewer scheduled formal meetings. I don't know if we really would be advancing this by asking for more information when we've probably got enough at the moment. I would say that I'm prepared to make a decision now.
Councillor Fox.
Thank you. Can I echo Ross's remarks? They're the same as mine. I also think that we are elected to make decisions. And if we're talking about managing, I guess, or supporting the workload of the staff, then that is actually helping direct them to seek information that will have real benefit and value for whole of council. I don't see any benefit myself in seeking further information in this report. I would be quite happy to make a decision based on what's presented today and go with what's been recommended.
So any other councillors would think that they need more information? I'm not saying we for or against, just do you have enough information to make a decision or vote on a resolution today? Anyone?
I have enough information, but I'd like to possibly consider the standing orders, but not today. In terms of
We can do that at any council meeting to request that.
And it's not making any difference to having extraordinary meetings anyway.
So I think we are able to take a vote on this, but I still would like to, that page 3 comparison, I'm not saying that council has it right, it seems very light, but certainly 22 versus 7 meetings taken is a significant difference. That certainly does indicate that other councils are governing less than us. So,
I'd just like to make one request that if we do go ahead with this, that council will consider doing a promotion of all our other subcommittees.
Do an action item if this passes, that gets reviewed and taken to the next council meeting. So we've received a report. If we've got no further discussion, so there's a resolution to adopt an 8-week meeting cycle for all council and committee meetings. We have someone move that? Gibson seconded. Councillor Fox. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against?
I'm against.
Pam Colenso against and abstaining.
Well, actually, no, I'm against.
2 against. The motion is carried. We'll go to item 3, which is the schedule of meetings, which is in your papers, appendix at the bottom of the appendices. So do we have someone move to adopt the 2021 schedule of ordinary meetings for council and committees? So thank you very much.
So I had a question just before the flow through, really, for Suzanne, because there was a request at the beginning of the training to take into account school holidays for those who have family over the school. Done that in this.
As best as possible. Yeah.
There's only a couple in there.
Cool. So have we have a mover for that? Yes, thank you, Ross. Seconded, councillor Plummer. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? The motion is carried. Then we have a resolution to endorse the proposed community board meeting schedule for presentation to the community boards for their decision on the timing. Thank you, councillor Gibson. Seconded, councillor Hay. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Motion is carried. This is just box ticking. So I move to delegate to the Chief Executive the ability to alter the schedule of ordinary meetings in consultation with the Apple committee chairs as required. Seconded. Thank you very much, councillor Plummer. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion is carried. And we will note that relevant terms of reference will be amended to reflect an 8-week cycle. And if we could also put it into our action items that we consider at the next council meeting, a communications plan for the promotion of subcommittees for public participation.
And a review of standing orders at some point.
We'll certainly note that as well. That action item, would that go through a subcommittee?
No, it actually goes to council.
Council?
It's council.
Good discussion on that one, guys.
In terms of the noting, do we have everyone second to that note? Just so that can.
I'll move.
I'll see.
I'd hate the bureaucracy to collapse over.
Come back with another report.
But it's really important that I note it.
I'll see him next.
Glad you're on our team.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Yeah, that one was for you.
I figured it might have been a shot.
So we now move on to item B2, which is the proposed Wairarapa solid waste management and minimisation bylaw 2021. Do we have a move?
Sorry, can we just take a 5-minute recess?
Okay.
Yeah, I need to go.
Those on.
Too much information.
Those on Zoom, are you comfortable with a 2-minute?
Coffee, sorry.
A 10-minute recess, to grab a cup of coffee and meet your cat out.
He wants to join in.
Right.
We'll reconvene at 1:15.
Gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
On this side, Rebecca, what's it like on your angle?
Not a dog show. Not all rugby.
Order in court. God, there's a heap of recommendations.
Yeah, yes. Annual report. Good. Right, so welcome back, everyone. Do we have Councillor Fox and Councillor Colenso live? If you could indicate.
Yes, I'm live.
Hello, Pam.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Jolly good.
Where's the pussycat?
Yeah.
Sitting next to me.
So we're now considering report B2, proposed solid waste management and minimalisation bylaw 2021. Do we have a mover to receive the report? Thank you, Councillor Jepson. Seconded, Councillor Colenso. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say no. Motion is carried. Now, Pam, can you outline what is being proposed here?
Pam's music.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I would like to. You will remember that we went through and agreed to adopt the Wellington Regional Waste Management and Minimisation bylaw plan earlier in the year, and this is the follow-up document from that to do a Wairarapa Regional Waste Minimisation Plan. So with the bylaw, the biggest change from the Wellington one is the licensing of the waste contractors, which will allow the collection of the data to be able to monitor more closely the types and quantities of waste going to class 1 landfills. This is really, really important so that we can get our handle on this information and try to reduce the amount of it going to the waste. The other difference between the two, the Wellington Regional one and the Wairarapa plan, is that the removal of the multi-unit development section, which was about section 12, I think, and it covered providing the provision of space for recycling and waste collection within the complex. I understand that this has been removed, and the reason for this is that it's covered under the Wairarapa Combined District Plan, and through this section that can be monitored. One thing that has changed that affects our residents is that when you put out your rubbish or recycling, that those bins need to be collected and brought off the street by noon of the following day, so that they can't stay out on the footpath for a week or so after the collection, that they must they must be able to be bought inside, and that's under 8.7 for that that section of it. Sorry, I should have told you where everything was. And I think those
How's
are
that going to be policed, Pam?
I would think probably community input, people dobbing in other residents, or I think people just wandering around will be able to tell whether people are leaving that out. But it just gives officers an avenue to contact people if their bins are out longer than necessary on a regular basis, or if the contractor hasn't been able to pick up, say, for example, you put out your recycling on the wrong day, then if that's still left out, then it gives council officers the chance to communicate with the residents and advise them on perhaps that they're using the wrong day, or point them where they can find the calendar to put to get back into sync with what's been collected on a certain day.
Just jump in there, Karen. Just clarifying around that timing. We had initially proposed with the other two councils in the one of that part to have controls around what times you can put the bins out and what times you have to take them away again. But recognising that led to implications for us, particularly around absentee landlords, and that was going to be quite problematic for us, in that we were requiring something that we didn't provide an alternative service for those ratepayers to be able to utilise. So we feel that we need to do more work around that. There was also an issue around congestion on Greytown Main Street. That was another control that we wanted to put into place, particularly requiring, there's a voluntary agreement at the moment that will work through the contractor that the bins don't go out until very early in the piece, and they're taken off the main street during the main shopping hours effectively. That is something that we're going to continue voluntarily and not within the control. We have to do some more work around what the implications of that is. So,
do you feel that's not been working, Karen, too well?
My understanding from Bryce is that it has been working. When it comes to actually pinning down where the controls would start and finish, it's not easy, because if you go from one street to another street, you end up including residential within that. So we just wanted to make sure, do some more work around what the actual problem is, so that we can refine our control to address what that problem is. So we'll be doing that over the next year.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I see a problem anyway, do you? Come in
from time to time.
On
a Wednesday morning, the rubbish truck going through the State Highway 2, there's a massive backup of traffic behind it, because it's unsafe to pass as well. So there are issues there with regards to collecting waste on Main Street. Sorry, are you finished?
I'm finished with that. Are you finished, Councillor Plenzo?
Yes, I have. Thank you. I think the actual Wairarapa plan is very good, and it's certainly going to help with the reduction of waste and knowing what waste is going into the landfill. So,
and if I could say, Pam, thank you for your time on this. It's been a number of years, and I've been to a couple of the meetings, and it's a very intense meeting over there in the Wellington Trains. Getting down to the nitty-gritty of it. Councillor West.
So with regards to the pickup of waste, which I get, State Highway 2, but that's solely based on the fact that they're going to be doing it during the daytime. Is there an opportunity to move that time frame to, say, 6 o'clock in the morning to cause less impact, or maybe later at night?
I think we could certainly throw that through to Bryce and Karen to take consideration.
Yeah, my understanding around that, because we were looking at perhaps swapping days to make it easier for perhaps Martinborough, which is more impacted by absentee than the weekend landlords, is that it's actually really difficult because, of course, the contractor services all of the Wairarapa, and so any changes here would impact on days and times available. And we are within a contract, but I mean, we can certainly ask the question, but I don't know how fruitful that will be.
Councillor Hay.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether this is a Pam or a Karen question. Just looking at this, how would we monitor with the changes that we're proposing? Would we, in the first instance, a gentle letter? Are there fines that are incorporated in this, or?
That's right. So just to be clear, Pam talked about the waste minimisation plan, and that's the overarching strategy. This is a bylaw that implements aspects of those plans. So it is a regulatory tool, which is why we have to go through the special consultative procedure and go to consultation and make clear that using a bylaw is the appropriate way of dealing with this issue. So it is enough that it would warrant some sort of regulatory response. So the tools available to us, we do have the provisions under the Litter Act, so for the controls around the mail and the unsolicited mail, that would effectively constitute litter. So there could be infringement notices under that Act. Bylaw enforcement comes down to through that discussions. I know that some of the other measures that the contractor puts in place at the moment, if there are unclean bins, for example, they get stipulated and then people, know that there's an issue there, and so the contractor will then talk to the homeowner. So we would take the same approach as we ordinarily do. No, but we would perhaps write letters. Ultimately, the only sanction we have for infringement, repeated infringement, is a prosecution through the district court. But that's the sort of the top end of the enforcement scale.
I just had one other comment about events. That from about October till April, we have a significant number of events, and I had some experience with the Martyrra Fair this year. They were trying desperately to introduce recycling, and given that it's run by the actual nitty-gritty is run by a relatively small committee, they had real challenges and had to have people monitoring each recycle place. And I noted that you plan to have an education program for a year prior to doing it. I would like to see the major representatives from all the major events that we've got, and we can make a list quite easily. I'd like to see them sitting in a room and get these suggestions, because while they were all very keen on it, it's got real challenges how to implement it. So I'd like to see that as soon as possible, just to talk to them in some sort of workshop, and whether we as council should be looking at, I know we have some recycle bins, but when I've looked around the country at other events, they've got a good system of recycle bins that make it very clear. I don't believe we've currently got that.
No, there is provision in this bylaw for those sorts of collections.
Yeah, so I'd like to see that conversation starting as early as possible, because what worries me is with the events, they're real lifeblood to the region, and I'd hate to see more layers of paperwork, etc., and making it hard for them. So,
this was certainly part of our consideration across the councils over these particular provisions, and whether noting that a lot of these event organisers are charities and voluntary organisations, so we are very sympathetic to that. And there is that transition period that does allow us to sit down and work with the event organisers. On the other hand, 1,000 people or more, they're quite significant events, and they are revenue gathering, and so there is the idea, I guess, there is that if they have the wherewithal to be able to organise an event at this scale, then we should be able to work with them on putting together a plan. I mean, having said that, currently the work that Bryce and the team and Riven's team do with event organisers is all voluntary so far, and actually it seems to work quite well, and there's definitely the will on all sides to actually make this work. So yeah, we definitely sit down, and we will draw their attention specifically to this consultation and invite submission.
So we could have a Jacinda approach that we are a team working together for the benefit of.
Can I jump in here, please, Your Worship? Lee, Joe Deans, our waste coordinator, is running workshops to help organisations run events and do plans and minimise their waste and things like that. She's got one coming up shortly, so I'll send that out to all councillors so that they've got a contact detail for anybody they know that can just email in and register for those events, and Joe will be really happy to have more people attend. So, and she has rung and she has talked to a number of people that she knows that do events on a regular basis and talk to them. So not specifically for our bylaw, but for what they need to do to reduce their waste and be responsible hosts.
If I could comment, I know that the 121 Festival in Featherston in last February had a waste policy that they went through, and I don't think, speaking with the event organiser, that it was onerous, and in fact they used it as part of their advertising, and I think it was incredibly successful. Gareth, was it?
Yeah, most of it was.
Yeah.
And it was because it was all worked out beforehand.
Yeah.
And it was, so actually, it was actually sold as part of the promotion that we're going to recycle everything and leave the tin. So
very positive. Pam, and I apologise, I probably should have done some more research on some of the earlier meetings, but I see that the construction site and demolition area, it appears to have changed from a minimum square metres down to $1 over time. Can you just enlighten me as to the reason for that? Because I would say that a $2 million cap, a minimum, won't really apply to a lot of South Wairarapa buildings. But I certainly know that there's been, the demolition waste can be quite considerable just from a 3-bedroom house.
I think that the $2 million is based more on an urban or city environment where building costs are of a greater value. Wairarapa, I think, Karen, you can probably comment on this as well. I think that Wairarapa left that figure in because the cost of building and cost of demolition and things like that are going up. So it's not going to be long before things in our area where somebody has to actually demolish something and then build, it's going to get over to that on a larger scale. But I haven't actually got that that section. Karen, did you want to add to that?
It was apparently a source of disagreement across the councils about what that should be and what that dollar value should be. Some felt that that was too low and actually would encompass some very nice houses. We as a combined 3 councils decided to take that approach for consultation. It is for consultation. So if people have views on that, then we would certainly like to hear.
Cool, right. That's a fair point. Any further discussion, people?
On this, you've done a great job, Pam.
Very well done. Okay, so I'm going to do recommendations 2 through to 6 together. So if you just excuse me while I read all this out. I would like a mover to adopt the proposed Wairarapa Solid Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2021 statement proposed in attachment 1, including the draft bylaw controls for public consultation in accordance with the special consultation procedure as set out by the Local Government Act 2002 and subject to adoption by the Carterton and South Wairarapa District Councils. Is that Masterton? South Wairarapa and Masterton District Councils to approve the consultation timelines and approach described in the report, to note that the Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Plan 2017 to 23 specifies that the 8 councils agree to investigate and, if feasible, develop, implement and oversee monitoring and enforcement of a regional bylaw or a suite of regionally consistent bylaws, to note that in an effort to promote regional consistency across solid waste management and minimisation, bylaw content was collaboratively developed by the 8 councils in the Wellington region. Staff from each council proposed to submit one suite of regionally consistent bylaw provisions for approval to each council for public consultation, and notes that the proposed Wairarapa Solid Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2021 will replace the Masterton and South Wairarapa District Council Solid Waste Bylaw 2012. Do we have someone move that? Councillor Plummer, seconded Councillor Fox.
So, was it Carterton and South Wairarapa, or was it?
No.
There should be Masterton and apologies.
Can we have that amended?
In number 2,
Yeah.
yeah, we did amend that in the reading. Seconded, sorry, we've seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, the motion is carried. A lot of reading.
Nice work, Pam.
Okay, so we'll now do recommendation 7 and 8 together. Do we have a mover to agree that in accordance with section 155-1 of the Local Government Act 2002, the proposed bylaw is the most appropriate way of addressing perceived waste management and minimisation issues, and agree that in accordance with sections 155-2 of the Local Government Act 2002, the proposed Wairarapa Solid Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2021 is the most appropriate form of bylaw and is not inconsistent with the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990. Move. Thank you very much. Seconded, Councillor Colenso. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, motion is carried. And then we'll now do recommendations 9 through 12 together. Do we have a mover that we agree to delegate the authority to the Wairarapa Policy Working Group to hear and consider submissions and make recommendations back to the 3 Wairarapa councils on the final Wairarapa Solid Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2021, and agrees to include the elected members from the 3 Wairarapa District Councils who are appointed to the Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Joint Subcommittee to support the Wairarapa Policy Working Group to hear and consider submissions and make recommendations back to the 3 Wairarapa councils on the final Wairarapa Solid Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2021, and agrees to appoint Councillor Fraser Malman as the chair to the Wairarapa Policy Working Group for the Wairarapa Solid Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2021 review, and delegates the responsibility to the Chief Executive to amend the proposal to include any amendments agreed by the council and any minor consequential edit.
Just before you vote on it, do Garrick and I need to abstain from part 9?
Yeah, probably.
Who was the chief executive? Is it a person? But maybe it should state that it's a.
It'll be ours. It is our Chief Executive. We can't do a resolution to bind another CEO. So, but before 9?
Yeah, because we can't vote to delegate to ourselves.
And I'd like to abstain from that piece because I'm being seconded to the working.
Cool.
Well, then I'll move it.
You'll move it. Seconded. Thank you, Lee. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, the motion is carried. So you've got those 3 that.
Yeah, so we're only abstaining to 9,
Yeah.
yes to the rest.
Yes. Right, thank you very much. There's a lot of talking, but we got it done. C1, shared services. We now consider.
Your worship, before we go on to the next part, I would like to thank the officers, both in our council and in the other 2 councils, for the work that they have put in doing the controls piece and the piece that's going out to public consultation. So there's the 3 parts of that, and you know, the work that they have also put into this has been enormous as well, and I'd like to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
And I'd particularly like to acknowledge my colleagues in Masterton Council who led on this and who did the lion's share of all the work.
There's been a lot of
work.
Right, so we're now considering
that was easy, Karen. You didn't have to say
report
much on that,
C1 Shared Services Working Group update. Do we have a mover to receive the report? Thank you, Lee. Seconded. Thank you, Brenda. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, the motion is carried. So councillors, are there any questions you wish to ask of officers?
I sit on this committee along with Pam and Alex, so you all heard Rebecca McCarterton, the Deputy Mayor, spoke at our combined meeting last week, but if you've got any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them with Pam and Alex.
I'm actually rather pleased to see it up and running again, because it's been sitting in mothball for a damn long time.
No, it's, we've met 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I know,
Most years.
was it prior to this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of collaboration going on, and we've
Yeah.
seen this amongst the 3 mayors and deputy mayors and the members to really get done. So it's all very positive, but I think we've had a recent update anyway at our shared council.
Yes, we did.
Any other?
Yeah, just on just on that, look, I'm completely supportive of any shared services we can do, as we know. But after our combined council meeting, surely the biggest thing that we're facing from a combined council perspective is the Three Waters issue. And I don't see that mentioned in here, and I just wonder whether should be front of mind. And I understand we've got the issue of Wellington Water, but we can't wait to sort of look at the what ifs.
Until such time as those what ifs became maybes, we must continue business as usual. We can't stall on progress on the expectations that something might happen. So, I think it is business as usual. We don't know what shape or form the changes in local government may be made through the 3 areas that are, the RMA, Three Waters, and what's the other big one that's looming? Transport. So it's business as usual. We'll continue as such.
And we do have the ability to put in other topics under shared services. Likewise, we made the decision to remove a couple of topics because there are other forums.
Look, I appreciate we can add things in, but part of me is a bit worried that when you have a central government that has an absolute majority, they have the ability to move much quicker than ever before. They have signalled they are going to move quickly. And I would far rather that we have started the process of talking and perhaps, and I'm not saying make any decisions, but at least get an idea of what the thoughts are of the other 2 councils so that we don't end up going, oh shit.
Again, we can't have those thoughts until we know specifics. And I'll draw your attention back to the potential for amalgamation and how that stalled a lot of progress in this area because we expected something to happen and it didn't. So I would caution against until we know. But certainly it'll be front of mind once specifics come and adopted into what we're doing.
I just thought the briefing we had on the combined councils from local government was very worthwhile.
From Malcolm, that wasn't from local government.
That wasn't,
yeah.
That was before
I found that really worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly. We take your point, but I think we're just going to continue until we know what's going on.
I'd just like to make a comment that I'm really encouraged by forming the closer relationships with our neighbouring councils. It is really nice to see, and I think it'll benefit us in many ways.
And I think, as Alex said, there's a real willingness around the room to see where we can work collaboratively in a practical way.
Yep, I can see that. We've never had that in the past.
The item you just discussed is exactly what based.
Yes.
So just to provide some context. So remember, this is a working group. So the shared service is not a decision-making body. So the only thing that you're being asked to, apart from just being informed about what's going on, is to agree the vision and criteria for shared service. It's important to know that we all agree where we're heading, and also what's the kind of criteria for selecting the kinds and ranges of shared service. So you see the criteria, there's some general criteria with very specific, couple of specific criteria to our regulatory, which is providing certainty to the customer through consistent regulatory process, which is very much a driver of our BCA cooperative service. But equally, if there are services that are provided by a, or better term, back office, like infrastructure, information technology or GIS systems, that we improve the efficiency of the use of the technology by making sure we've got some similar systems and processes. And why that became blindingly obvious is when we started the building control authority, we suddenly realised we all had different systems for eligible council. So the first step was actually to get our systems integrated. So the more we can do that, that makes each progressive step easier. So the only thing I'm being asked to agree is the vision statement and the criteria in this report. The rest is participation.
And with that, we'll go on to, if I can have a move, we're ready to go through. Agree to agree that the vision agrees the vision statement and criteria for shared services and notes the progress of the shared services currently underway. Moved by Councillor Hay, seconded, thank you, Ross. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, the motion is carried. And we now we'll consider a motion to go into public excluded. The full motion and reasons is presented in the agenda papers. Can I have a councillor move that we enter into public excluded? Councillor Gibson, seconded Councillor Eames. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, the motion is carried. So can we stop recording?